I'm Ethan Walker. I'm 33 years old. And last month, my own mother and brother sold the cabin I built without asking, without warning, and without even blinking. They forged my signature, filed false paperwork, had the whole place dismantled and cleared while I was out of state for work. But the worst part, they told themselves it was justified, that they were entitled to take it. If you've ever trusted your family and paid the price, stay with me. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about rebuilding brick by brick. And if you've ever watched something you love vanish in an instant, hit that like button. Comment if you've ever had to cut ties to survive. And don't forget to subscribe, because this isn't the kind of pain you just walk off. It started with silence. Not the kind that soothes, like snowfall on a pine ridge. No. This was the kind that hums behind your ears when something isn't right, when your gut tightens before your brain knows why. I was on a project in Austin, an urban renewal contract for a small eco-village pilot, and hadn't been back to my cabin in nearly 2 months. Still, every morning I'd wake and picture at the wooden beams I sanded myself, the glass windows I hoisted up with shaking arms, the scent of cedar I used to rub into my palms like cologne. The Whispering Pines. That's what I called it. The land had come with that name carved into a stone, half buried near the mailbox. I kept it there. It felt respectful, like I was building on something older, sacred. For 5 years. That cabin was my Sunday ritual, my therapy, my rebellion. I'd work city jobs Monday through Friday, blueprints, permits, deadlines, and then vanish into the trees come Saturday. I was 26 when I bought the land. It was cheap, remote, and filled with thorny scrub. My mother called it a dump. My younger brother, Leo, home from NYU for Christmas, asked if I was planning to raise goats or join a cult. But they never understood what it meant to me. They weren't there when I built it, when I carried every single board by hand, sometimes bleeding through my gloves. They weren't there when I slept in a tent the first winter, just to make sure no one messed with the site. They didn't see me. They still don't. Let me back up. I'm the eldest. My father, Richard Walker, passed from a stroke when I was 17. Mom kind of shrank after that. Her job as a second-grade teacher wasn't enough to support us long-term, so I picked up work mostly construction while finishing high school. Leo was only 12. I was the responsible one, the good son, the one who never asks for anything. And they milked that. Leo grew up thinking ambition meant apps, investors, buzzwords like pivot and seed round. He never lasted more than a year at any job. But he always landed on his feet. Mom called him visionary. I called him lucky to be born cute. When he showed up last Christmas, I hadn't seen him in nearly a year. He came with polished shoes, a forced tan, and a new pitch. What if we turned Whispering Pines into a luxury retreat? He had a deck, a real one, PowerPoint slides, market analysis, influencer testimonials, even a fake brand logo. Pinescape retreat for the restless. I laughed. I thought he was joking. But Mom didn't. It's a smart idea. Ethan, she said, sipping her wine, you've had that place sitting there unused. Let your brother bring in real money for once. I use it every month, I replied, and I built it, every inch, with my own hands. Exactly, Leo chimed, which is why you need help scaling. You're too emotionally attached to see the potential. I told them no, politely, firmly. I thought that was the end of it. I couldn't have been more wrong. The day the betrayal came to light, it wasn't through lawyers or news. It was a voicemail from my neighbor, Martha Sanchez, 68, retired nurse. Widow. She owns the cabin 2 lots down, bakes zucchini bread, talks to raccoons. She's the kind of person who knows when a squirrel sneezes in the woods. Her message was short. Hey, Ethan. Honey, there's a construction truck at your cabin. Big one, 2 men in suits. They're walking through the property like they own the place. You okay? My stomach dropped. I called, no answer. I texted Leo. Nothing. Mom, out of service. I booked the next flight out, rented a car, drove the winding road to Whispering Pines like a fugitive returning to a crime scene. And when I got there, it was gone. Not the land, not the trees, but the cabin. The porch was dismantled, windows removed, beams pulled from the foundation like bones from a rib cage. There were tire tracks in the dirt, wood shavings in the wind, and a laminated sign staked into the soil. Private property, future site of Pinescape. They'd done it. They'd actually done it. I stood there, boots crunching in gravel, staring at the ashes of something I built for peace, and they'd raised it for profit. And in that moment, I felt nothing. Not rage, not grief, just cold. Like something inside me had finally snapped loose. I walked around the debris in silence, found my old work table split in half, tossed behind a stump like trash. Then I saw it. A scrap of cedar, notched, smoothed. It was the base of the miniature cabin I'd built years ago, just a model I kept on my desk. I used to look at it when work got rough, when the world didn't make sense. It reminded me of what I could make. They'd even broken that. But as I picked it up, I smiled, just a little, because now I had proof. Proof of what they'd destroyed. And I knew, standing there in the wreckage, that this wasn't the end. This was the blueprint. Next part, demolition goes both ways. When I was a kid, my mother used to tell me, family means everything, even when it hurts. I used to believe her. But standing in the wreckage of my cabin, with sawdust in my throat and betrayal crawling beneath my skin, that sentence took on a whole new meaning. They didn't just take my cabin, they shattered the last thread of trust I had in them. 2 days after I found the place gutted, I sat on the porch of my neighbor Martha's cabin, drinking lukewarm chamomile tea from a mug that said, "Retired, not expired." She didn't say much, just sat beside me, knitting something peach-colored that might have been a scarf or a sock. Then, after a while, she said, "Ethan, honey, they treated you like a spare tire, only useful when something else falls apart." I didn't answer, but I felt something crack open inside me. Because she was right. My whole life, I'd been the backup plan, the steady paycheck, the emergency contact, the guy who paid the vet bills for a cat that wasn't his and drove 150 miles to fix Leo's car when he couldn't figure out how coolant worked. And every time, I told myself this is what good sons do. But good sons don't get robbed by their own family. I drove straight from Martha's to the county recorder's office the next morning. I needed to see it with my own eyes. The clerk, a young guy named Travis with thick glasses and a neck tattoo of a koi fish, pulled up the records. His mouth tightened when he scrolled. "Yeah, looks like there was a transfer of ownership about 3 weeks ago. Signed, notarized, processed, all here." "That's impossible," I said. "I never signed anything." "You're listed as the seller, Mr. Walker." I asked for a copy. He handed it over with latex gloves, like it might burn me. The signature at the bottom of the transfer looked eerily like mine. Too perfect, too practiced. That's when the heat hit me. Not rage, but shame. That I'd trusted them enough to give them access. That somewhere along the way, I let my own mother gaslight me into thinking it was okay to share. I drove back to the city, my hands clenching the steering wheel so hard the leather creaked. At home, I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in years. Inside a small flash drive with a green sticker that read, "Backup," on it. A recording. It was from 8 months ago. A dinner we had at my place when Leo was between gigs and Mom had come into town. I'd recorded it because I'd just installed smart audio in the house and wanted to test the feature. I'd forgotten all about it. But when I played it back, There it was. Leo, swirling his wine, saying, "If he doesn't sign, we'll just say he did. Who's gonna check Ethan trusts Mom more than he trusts himself?" And my mother, laughing. "He won't fight us. He never does." My hands went numb. Then they started shaking. I forwarded the recording to a friend of mine, Jenna Hall. We'd dated briefly years ago, but now she was a civil attorney specializing in real estate fraud. I didn't even get halfway through explaining before she interrupted. "Ethan, that's criminal. You know that, right? They committed felony-level fraud." "I just want it back." I told her, "I don't want to destroy them." "That's not your call anymore. They made it theirs." She agreed to help, but warned me. "We're gonna need more. Paperwork, witnesses, motive, and a damn good strategy." I nodded. I'd spent years drawing blueprints, calculating load-bearing structures, building things to last through storms. Now I'd do the same. But this time, the structure was revenge. I started small. I called the notary who had verified the signature on the property transfer. She sounded young, nervous, said she was doing a favor for a friend of a friend, and didn't realize the signer wasn't me. I asked if she'd testify. She hung up. I took that as a yes. Next, I reached out to a contractor whose name showed up on a Pinescape permit request. He thought I was Leo, told me the demo was rushed, not up to code, but the check cleared. So, whatever. Then I visited the county planning office, and what I found there was a gold mine. Leo had filed a rezoning request, not for a single retreat cabin, but for a full-blown luxury compound, multiple units, hot tubs, fire pits, even a helipad. He'd pitched it as a family legacy project, a Walker generational brand. He'd even uploaded a promo video. There I was, voiceover, time lapses of my cabin being built, clips I'd shot for a private YouTube I never shared. Somehow, he'd found them, used them, claimed them. He stole my story. He stole me. That night, I sat in my apartment with the lights off, staring at the broken base of the miniature cabin I'd retrieved from the ruins. My fingers traced the grooves. I could still smell the cedar oil. And in the dark, I made a decision. This wasn't about getting even anymore. It was about reclaiming what was mine. Not just the land, not just the cabin, but the part of myself I'd buried under guilt and silence, and the illusion of being good. I wasn't good anymore. I was done being their spare tire. Next morning, I filed an injunction, froze the Pinescape project, launched an ownership dispute, served Leo and Mom both with formal notices. No more phone calls, no more dinners, no more "let's talk about this as a family." They crossed the line. I was tearing up the blueprint and building my own, because the next time they tried to screw me over, they'd find out I'd already set the trap. You'd think once I filed the legal papers, once the gloves were off and the fight was in the open, that Mom and Leo would finally show some shame. Or at least act like adults. But if there's one thing this saga taught me, it's that some people would rather set the whole house on fire than admit they lit the match. The day after the injunction hit, my mother showed up at my door. No call, no warning, just rang the bell like it was Thanksgiving morning. She stood there in a cardigan and pearls, clutching a loaf of banana bread like it was some kind of peace treaty. "Can we talk?" she asked. I didn't invite her in. She looked past me into the apartment, probably searching for traces of the Ethan she used to know. The one who fixed things, smoothed things over, took the blame. That Ethan was gone. "You sold my home," I said. "You broke the law." "It was for the family." "Ethan, we are family." "No, we're not. Family doesn't con each other and laugh about it over wine." Her face twisted, offended, like I was the one being unreasonable. "Your brother needed help. You're doing fine. You always do. Because I work for it. Because I sacrificed. You think Leo deserves a mansion built on the ashes of my life?" "Don't be dramatic." She actually said that, don't be dramatic. As if I was throwing a tantrum over a parking spot. Not a house I spent 5 years building from scratch. I closed the door before I said something I couldn't take back. Behind the wood, I could still hear her sigh. Not with sadness, with disappointment. Like I was the one who'd failed her. 2 days later, Leo called. Blocked number. Of course. You're making this harder than it has to be, he said. His voice all slick confidence. You think a restraining order's gonna stop Pinescape? We've got investors. Momentum. You had momentum, until I froze the permits. You really want to sink both of us, he snapped, because that's where this goes. Mutual destruction. I'm not the one who committed fraud. Leo. He laughed short, bitter. You know what your problem is. You can't let go. You build a house. And suddenly, you think you're better than the rest of us. I didn't build a house. I said. I built a life. You tore it down. Then I hung up. It would have been easier, so much easier, to let the lawsuit run its course. Wait it out. Hope the judge saw it my way. But part of me knew that wouldn't be enough. Because Leo and my mom didn't just want to win. They wanted credit. They wanted to be seen as visionaries, as builders, as the smart ones. And they were still using my story to do it. So I made a plan. First, I called Martha. The woman may look like she knits pillows for hummingbirds, but she's sharper than a cactus in July. You still got that trail cam pointing at my property line? I asked. Baby, I got 3, she said. I trust bears more than I trust developers. She handed over the footage the next morning. Grainy, but clear enough. Leo and a man in a hard hat walking the perimeter, marking off trees with orange spray paint 2 weeks before the ownership transfer was even filed. Proof of intent. Next, I dug into Leo's finances. Or rather, I had Jenna's office do it. Turns out, Leo had already taken out a private loan using the projected value of Pinescape before the cabin was even demolished. He used that money to pay the contractors and to book a corporate retreat for potential investors at a luxury lodge in Jackson Hole. All expenses paid, on land that didn't legally belong to him. Classic Leo. Meanwhile, the legal process dragged like molasses in January. Injunctions, hearings, counterclaims. My mother filed a motion to dismiss, claimed I'd gifted her partial ownership of the land 2 years ago. She even submitted an email faked. By the way, where I allegedly said, "Glad you see Whispering Pines as part of our family legacy." What I'd actually written, "Glad to see you finally see Whispering Pines as something worth visiting." They edited it, cropped it, submitted it to court. Jenna nearly put her fist through the wall. But I didn't lose sleep. Because I had something they didn't know about. A card I'd been saving since the day Leo first mentioned joint ownership. See, back when I agreed to let him help with the Airbnb licensing, I created a second LLC, one that technically leased the cabin for my own name, for liability purposes. It was obscure, buried in legalese, but legally. Leo had signed documents stating he did not own the property, and that he was only managing operations under the LLC umbrella. He hadn't even read the full contract. He never did. And now, that paper trail was going to eat him alive. I held on to that knowledge like a firestone in my chest. But there was one more thing I had to do, something personal. I drove back up to the ruins of Whispering Pines. The ground was dry now, snow gone, just raw earth and broken dreams. I brought my tool bag, some scrap wood, a buck of old cedar shims I'd saved for a someday project. And right there on the same patch where the porch used to be, I rebuilt the miniature cabin, the one they'd smashed. Didn't take long, 3 hours, 4, maybe. When I finished, I set it on a small rock, stepped back, and breathed. Not in anger, in clarity. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about legacy, mine. Theirs could burn. Mine would stand. Because the next step I was going to make Leo's entire empire collapse, using the very hands he once called amateur. They say revenge is best served cold. But that assumes you're looking to serve it at all. Me, I wasn't interested in a grand finale or some dramatic explosion. I wanted precision, quiet ruin, a slow crumble from the inside out. Just like they did to me. It started with an email. From Jenna. Subject line, he messed up. Inside a PDF, 34 pages. A detailed report from a private investigator we'd hired 2 weeks earlier. Leo had taken out a private bridge loan from an offshore capital firm. Not a bank, not even a licensed lender. They specialized in risk-lean real estate startups, translation sharks with letterhead. And guess what? He used as collateral future projected equity in the Pinescape development tied to a parcel of land that wasn't even legally his. He'd borrowed $500,000 on a house of cards. I could feel my pulse in my teeth. You have to understand, this wasn't just a legal blunder. It was a ticking bomb. Because if Leo defaulted, these people didn't sue. They seized, fast, loud, public. And with the injunction I filed still holding, Leo couldn't break ground, couldn't move units, couldn't collect deposits. In other words, he was trapped. And he didn't even know it. We moved quickly. First, Jenna drafted a formal letter to the lender, warning them that the collateral in Leo's agreement was tied to fraudulently transferred property, currently under dispute. We didn't threaten, just informed. Second, we made sure it reached them and their legal department, on paper, certified. Third, I posted a public notice on the Pine County development site that read, "The land known as Whispering Pines is under legal review. Any offers, sales, or contracts made under the Pinescape LLC may be subject to civil and criminal liability." I didn't sign my name. I didn't have to. 2 days later, the Pinescape Instagram page went dark, their website down for maintenance. Leo hadn't called yet, but I could feel the temperature rising. Then came the twist I didn't expect. A woman named Valerie reached out. She introduced herself as Leo's investor contact, but as we talked, it became clear she was more than that. She'd put up $60K of her own savings into Pinescape through Leo, promised equity, promised returns. She was sharp, angry, embarrassed, and she had receipts. Wire transfers, contracts, emails where Leo guaranteed her full access to the back end, which, spoiler alert, didn't exist. "I've filed fraud charges," she said, "but if you're going to court too, maybe we can coordinate." I gave her Jenna's number and added one more domino to the line. In the meantime, I kept building. Not a cabin, not yet, but a case. Jenna and I compiled the doctored email from Mom, the LLC trail, the notary who never verified the signature, the rezoning applications filed before the deed transfer, the investor testimony. But I still needed one more thing, something that wasn't in the paperwork. So I called Leo. He picked up, breathless, probably mid-spin in some office he couldn't afford. "What now?" he barked. "We need to talk, in person." "Not happening, unless you're ready to settle." "Oh, I'm settling," I said, "just not the way you think." He went quiet. I gave him the time, the place. The old ranger station near Whispering Pines. Abandoned, but public. Neutral ground. He showed up late. Aviators, loafers, designer hoodie like he'd just wandered off a startup pitch deck. "You dragging me out here to make threats," he said, arms wide. "No, I'm giving you a chance. To what crawl back under the rock you came from." I held out a manila envelope. He took it, opened it. His eyes scanned the contents. His jaw tightened. The rezoning timeline, the LLC contracts, the offshore loan, Valerie's affidavit. "You've been busy," he muttered. "I'm not the one who needs to be worried." He tried to play it cool, but I saw it, the twitch in his cheek, the way his fingers gripped the folder like it might fall apart. "So what? This is blackmail." "This is evidence, which I'll file in 48 hours. Unless? Unless what? I looked him dead in the eye. Unless you sign the reversal deed, return full ownership to me, withdraw your LLC filings, shut down Pinescape, publicly, permanently. And if I don't, then you can explain to your investors, your lender, and the state attorney general why your Golden Boy project was built on fraud. He didn't answer, just stared at me like he was calculating how fast he could run. Then he laughed. You think this wins? You think this gets you your cabin back? No, I said. This gets me everything. And I walked away. 2 nights later, Jenna called me at 11:17 p.m. He signed. You're serious? He lawyered up. But yes, the reversal deed's in. County clerk's processing it now. I exhaled. Long. Heavy. It wasn't over. Not yet. But the foundation was shifting. And for the first time in months, I could feel the ground beneath me holding steady. I drove up to the land the next morning. No construction tape, no fencing, just trees and silence. I walked the old path, past where the porch had been, past the stump where I used to sit with my coffee. And there, still standing on its little rock, was the miniature cabin. I picked it up, held it close. It smelled like hope, but what I didn't know yet was that my mother had her own plan. And she wasn't going down without a fight. The papers were signed. The land was legally mine again. On the surface, it looked like the war was over. But if you've ever played chess, you know sometimes the real danger isn't the king. It's the quiet little pawn that slips across the board while everyone's watching the wrong piece. And in this game, that pawn was my mother. I found out the hard way. 3 days after Leo caved, I got a letter. Not an email, not a call. An actual letter, certified, stamped. It was from an attorney named Donald Creel, based out of Santa Fe. The opening line, "This letter serves as formal notification that your mother, Elaine Walker, has filed for equitable ownership claim of the Whispering Pines property." My jaw clenched. My pulse thudded behind my ears. She was suing me. Again. This time. Claiming that the land was jointly developed with familial intention, and that her emotional and financial contributions entitled her to partial ownership. Emotional contribution. She never spent a night in that cabin. Financial, she once gave me a $300 Lowe's gift card for Christmas. Now she wanted half. I took a walk after that. No destination. Just walked. Every step on the pavement echoed this low drumbeat of disbelief. How far could she twist the truth? How deep did her entitlement run? I'd expected the blow to come from Leo, but I underestimated her. Her need to control, to rewrite the story in a way where she was always the suffering matriarch. I called Jenna. She's bluffing, Jenna said, flipping pages fast. It's a nuisance suit, Ethan. She knows she can't win, but she's hoping to rattle you into settling, into giving her a piece just to make her go away. I didn't want to settle. I wanted the rot gone, root and all. Let's bury this, I said, and let's do it with facts. We started digging. Bank statements, property taxes, recorded calls, even old emails where she mocked the cabin as Ethan's little man cave in the woods. Then came the key, a voicemail I'd forgotten about, from 5 years earlier. She left it during the first winter I was building when I was still sleeping on a cot in a tent and had no heating. Her voice was clipped, annoyed. Honestly, Ethan, this whole cabin nonsense is just you pretending you're not a failure. You're not some frontier hero. You're a glorified handyman trying to play Thoreau. Jenna listened to it twice. This destroys her narrative, she said. We'll file a motion to dismiss with prejudice. Nail it shut. And that's when I realized something. I didn't want to just win this in court. I wanted the world to see what they'd tried to erase. So I rebuilt my YouTube channel. the one I used to post DIY footage on. Back when I was just sharing blueprints and sanding tricks with a dozen subscribers. I uploaded a new video, title How I Lost and Reclaimed My Home. I didn't name names, didn't mention my mother or Leo, just told the truth. The betrayal, the forged documents, the rebuild. I showed the miniature cabin. I ended with footage of me walking the lot again, holding blueprints for the new Whispering Pines. The views started slow, then picked up. Comments flooded in. Messages from strangers who'd been through the same siblings stealing wills. Parents guilt-tripping over inheritance. Families tearing themselves apart in the name of legacy. The story struck a nerve. I wasn't alone. And then the news came. Leo had vanished. Not off the grid, just offline. Social media accounts deleted. Pinescape LLC dissolved. Even his LinkedIn said seeking new ventures. He'd quietly sold what little equity he had left to a silent partner. Valerie, the investor who'd nearly lost her life savings, had taken over his remaining assets in arbitration. He was out. No press, no apology, just gone. I thought that would be the end. Until Martha called. "There's a man out here on your land. Hun," she said, wearing dress shoes, holding papers, doesn't look like a hiker. I drove up, and there he was. Donald Creel, my mother's attorney, sweating in a wool blazer, holding a file thick with court documents. "Mr. Walker," he said, offering a handshake I didn't take. "Your mother would like to settle privately." "No. She's prepared to withdraw the suit in exchange for a 5% symbolic stake." "No. She says it's about recognition, about family." I stepped closer, spoke quietly. "Tell Elaine she had recognition. She had a son who built something beautiful and wanted to share it." And she laughed in his face. He nodded, but he didn't leave. "Then I assume we'll see you in court." "Please do," I said. "I've already reserved the front row." Later that night, I found myself sitting at the edge of the new foundation layout. It was just markers and string for now, but in my head, I could already see the beams, the windows, the firelight dancing on polished wood. I opened my notebook, flipped past the structural notes, past the materials list, and there it was, the sketch I'd done of the miniature cabin, the one I used as my guide. It had become more than a model. It was a symbol now of everything I'd fought for, everything I'd lost and decided to reclaim. The cabin was never just a home. It was proof that I existed, that I created something good, that I endured. And then, my phone buzzed. A new voicemail from my mother. Her voice, small, tired. "Ethan, I made mistakes, but I'm still your mother. Doesn't that mean anything?" No apology, no ownership, just emotional ransom. I deleted it. But 2 days later, she did something no one saw coming. And it almost cost me everything, all over again. 2 days after I deleted that voicemail, I came back to the cabin site to find police tape strung between 2 trees. Not construction warning signs, not zoning flags. Black and yellow "do not cross" tape, fluttering in the wind like a cruel joke. I froze. At first, I thought maybe there was a break-in, a wild animal incident, something mundane but serious. But then I saw the red marker spray-painted across one of my posts. Code 147, hazardous violation, pending investigation. I felt the blood drain from my face. Hazardous violation. My site was clean. I followed every permit. Every form Jenna filed was airtight. The foundation hadn't even been poured yet. So who? And that's when it hit me. My mother. Jenna's call came in while I was still staring at the tape. "You've got to be kidding me," she said. Voice clipped and sharp. She reported the site for environmental endangerment. "That's not even real." "Oh, it's real enough to trigger a shutdown pending inspection. She filed it anonymously with the County Conservation Board. Said you were pouring chemical runoff into protected wetlands." That's insane. There's not even a stream within a mile. Doesn't matter. The county has to investigate. Standard protocol. Your permit's frozen again. This will take weeks. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Weeks. After everything we'd fought through, we were back to square one because of a lie. I drove straight to Elaine's house. She lived in a condo outside Santa Fe, behind a wrought iron gate and manicured hedges that looked like they'd never seen a leaf out of place. She answered the door like she'd been expecting me. "I figured you'd show up," she said. "What the hell did you do?" She didn't flinch, didn't even try to deny it. I did what any responsible citizen would. I reported a concern. "You made it up. That land is clean. There's nothing toxic there but your memory." "You're emotional. Again." "No, I said I'm furious and there's a difference." She tilted her head, all syrupy condescension. "You always needed someone to blame. First your father, then your brother, now me. But maybe, just maybe, if you weren't so obsessed with being the martyr, you wouldn't be so alone." I stepped back, suddenly aware of how tight my fists were clenched. "You sabotaged my home, my life, because you can't stand not being in control. Because you don't understand family. We protect our name, Ethan, our legacy." "This is my legacy, not yours." For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Not regret, not guilt. Fear. Like she'd finally realized I wasn't that kid who waited for approval anymore. The inspection came 2 days later. A middle-aged man in boots and mirrored sunglasses walked the land, clipboard in hand. He barely looked at me, but when he was done, he shook his head. "This is clean," he said. "I've seen environmental violations. This ain't one. Your mom's either confused or cruel." I gave him a bitter smile. "Definitely not confused." He laughed, signed off, gave me the green light. The tape came down, but something inside me stayed knotted, because now I knew it wasn't about the land. It was about breaking me, and she'd keep trying until she did. So I went public. Again. New video, title: When Your Family Becomes the Enemy. I told the whole story. No names, still. But the outline was crystal clear. A mother who weaponized guilt. A son who built his dream from scratch. And how legacy can be poison when it's built on lies. It went viral. Again. Thousands of people poured into the comments. Stories of betrayal. Inheritance wars. Manipulative parents. Families who destroyed each other over 1 acre of dirt. Turns out, America is full of broken homes that look fine from the outside. And then I got the email. From Leo. Subject line: "Don't trust her." I almost deleted it on sight. But something made me click. Inside were 3 files, PDFs, labeled Elaine, Trust, Transfer, Draft. PDF. Whispering Pines Investment, Pitch 2024, PPTX, Settlement NDA Proposal, DocX. I opened the first one. It was a trust draft, dated months earlier, outlining how Elaine intended to repackage Whispering Pines into a legacy trust for her name. With her as primary beneficiary, I wasn't even listed. Leo wasn't either. It would all go to a charitable foundation in her name. She hadn't just wanted control. She wanted erasure. Total rewriting of the story. She planned to build something shiny and name it after herself, then paint me as the troubled son who walked away. I called Leo. "Why send this?" He sighed. "Because I saw it too late. I thought I was her golden boy. Turns out I was just the pawn before the queen moved in. You're still not forgiven. Didn't ask to be. Just don't let her finish what she started." He hung up, and I sat there, staring at the screen, with my fists trembling. Because he was right. She wasn't finished. I went back to the lot the next morning, sat on the log near where the new kitchen would go, pulled the miniature cabin from my bag, set it on the stump. I had added a small plaque to the bottom. Just one word. Mine. The sun came through the trees, and for the first time in months, I felt warmth again. This land knew me. It remembered my hands, my sweat, my hope. It didn't need a name carved in stone. It just needed me. And as I looked out over that land, I knew, if she wanted a final battle, I'd give her one she'd never forget. 3 weeks later, we met in court. Santa Fe County Civil Division, courtroom 4C. Wood paneling, plastic chairs, the faint smell of lemon disinfectant, and 2 generations of resentment about to be aired in front of a judge with a tired gaze and an iron gavel. My mother wore charcoal gray, conservative, widow chic. I wore denim, a button-down, boots still dusty from the land she tried to take. She didn't look at me, not once. The hearing was short. Jenna presented the timeline, the fraudulent property transfer, the forged documents, the zoning interference, the environmental report that was proven false within 48 hours. She showed the trust draft Leo had sent. Then she played the voicemail, the one where my mother called the cabin your little man cave delusion, and told me I was pretending not to be a failure. It played out across the courtroom like a slow, quiet gut punch. When it ended, there was a hush, and for the first time, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not shame, but exposure. Like a queen stripped of her crown in front of the peasants. The judge ruled in our favor. The suit was dismissed, with prejudice.
Meaning she couldn't come back. No retrial. No refiling.
Whispering Pines was mine. Legally, publicly, permanently. As the gavel dropped, my shoulders loosened in a way they hadn't in years. But I didn't smile. Because this wasn't a victory. It was a release. And release doesn't always feel like celebration. Sometimes, it feels like grief. Outside the courtroom, my mother approached me. No press, no crowd, just the low hum of a vending machine and 2 people who once shared a last name. "You think you've won," she said. Her voice was flat, cold, hollow. "I don't feel like I've won anything," I replied. "I feel like I just buried the last thread of our family." "That cabin changed you." "No, you changed me. That cabin saved me." She stared at me like I'd spoken a language she didn't recognize. And then she turned, walked away. No goodbye, no apology, not even a glance back. 2 months later, the cabin was rebuilt. Wider footprint, same soul. The living room had panoramic windows now, facing the tree line where morning light broke like water. I installed solar panels, rainwater collection, a stone hearth. Everything my 25-year-old self couldn't afford, my 35-year-old self had earned. And in the entryway, sitting quietly on a reclaimed shelf, the miniature cabin, still marked with soot from the day I almost burned it. Still whole, still mine. Martha came by with lemon bars. She stood in the doorway, eyes wide, hand over her mouth. "You really did it," she whispered. I nodded. "I almost didn't. But you did. You stayed. That counts." We sat on the new porch and ate in silence. She handed me an envelope before she left. Inside was an old photo. Black and white, faded. Me, 17, hammering the first beam of the original porch, my dad standing behind me, blurry but beaming. I hadn't seen that photo in 20 years. "Your dad would have been proud," Martha said. And I believed her. Online, the story kept spreading. Not because of the drama, but because it resonated. People messaged me from every state, from overseas. Stories of families who turned into battlegrounds. Love inheritances fought over. Love manipulated. Trust broken and rebuilt. It made me realize something what happened to me wasn't rare. It was American. This myth that blood means loyalty. That legacy justifies control. That love is earned by obedience. I broke the myth. And I built something honest in its place. One afternoon, I hosted a small gathering. Just 10 people. People who'd followed the story online, drove across the country, emailed me things like, "This helped me leave my narcissistic dad. I used your video in therapy. You made me feel less alone." We stood in the cabin, shared cider, laughed. And at sunset, we hiked to the clearing and watched the sun go down through the pines. Nobody spoke. Nobody had to. That night, I sat by the fire, alone. Wrote something in my journal. Sometimes you don't get justice. You get distance. And sometimes, that's enough. I closed the book, tossed another log on the fire, and looked out the window as the wind picked up through the trees. I don't know what'll happen next. Maybe the land gets passed down. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe the scars fade. Maybe they don't. But tonight, in this cabin I built with my own hands, with no one left to take it from me, I finally feel home. Story 2. My name is Rachel Monroe. I'm 31 years old. I used to think pain was something you could measure by bruises, by hospital visits, by how long it took to cover it all up with a smile. But the night my husband hit me across the face and disappeared with our 2 children the next morning, that's when I realized the worst pain isn't physical. It's silence. It's walking into your house and hearing nothing, no laughter, no footsteps, no mommy echoing through the hall. Just silence. He left behind one thing, a note on the kitchen table. 8 words scrawled in his rushed, all caps handwriting. "The kids are with me. Don't try to find us." I stood there, one side of my face still tender from the swelling, my hospital bracelet still wrapped around my wrist, staring at the paper like it was written in another language. My legs buckled. I collapsed into the kitchen chair like a puppet whose strings had been sliced. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stopped breathing for a moment because everything that made me a mother had been ripped away overnight. Let me rewind. Because if I'm going to tell you how I got my kids back, how I made sure Alex Monroe suffered, you need to know how I ended up here in the first place. You need to know what it's like to love a man who was never going to love you back in the way that mattered. When I met Alex, I was 24. I was bright-eyed, fresh out of a grad program I didn't finish, working part-time at the local library in Evanston, Illinois. I loved books, loved stories, believed in people more than they deserved. He was 27, a freelance software developer who made his own hours. Talked like he'd read the manual on charisma. Charming, steady, smart. He said I made him feel anchored, that I was the soft to his sharp. I took that as a compliment. 6 months later, we were married. I traded ambition for family, academia for lullabies. I told myself it was noble that being a full-time mom made me more of a woman, not less. We had Liam first, then Emily 2 years later. I sang to them every night, "You are my sunshine," the same way my mom used to sing to me before she passed. It became a ritual, something sacred. But slowly, Alex began carving me out of my own home. "You don't need to sing so loud," he'd say from the hallway. "Liam needs more structure," he'd add, taking over bedtime. "You're too soft on them." At first, I thought he just cared, wanted the best, until the boundaries blurred. He didn't want me seeing Sarah anymore, my best friend since childhood. "She's single and bitter. That energy's toxic," he said, like he was reading from a script. He criticized my clothes, my hair, the way I spoke to cashiers. "You smile too much," he once said. "It's naive." Before I knew it, my world was limited to 3 people: my kids, Alex, and the Rachel he wanted me to be. That was the first theft, not the kids, not the punch. The first theft was me. But I stayed, because I believed what every woman's been trained to believe, that love means sacrifice, that broken men can be fixed if you just love them harder. And I told myself it's not that bad. He didn't hit me. He works hard. He loves the kids. But love shouldn't feel like a leash. Then came Elena. At first, it was subtle. Late-night messages, mysterious calls he took outside. "It's a client," he'd say, always with that bored tone like I was crazy for asking. When I asked directly, he laughed. "She's a friend. You're being paranoid." But I knew, and you always know, don't you? Still, I stayed. Because I was broke. Because I didn't want to lose my kids. Because shame wrapped around me like a winter coat I couldn't take off. Then came the night that changed everything. I had just put Emily to bed. She asked if I'd sing, and I hesitated. Alex hated when I sang, but I did it anyway, soft, so soft. Her eyes fluttered closed halfway through the first verse. I walked into the living room and saw him by the fireplace, scrolling on his phone, smirking. I asked, gently, "Why don't you come home for dinner anymore?" He didn't look up. "Are you serious right now?" he muttered. "You're pathetic." My heart didn't break. It folded, quietly. But I pressed on. "I think we should talk." And that's when he snapped. His hand flew so fast, so sudden. I didn't even flinch until it was over. The slap echoed across the hardwood. My cheek stung, burned. My ear rang like a fire alarm. I didn't scream, didn't run. I just said, in the calmest voice I could muster, "You need to leave." He did, for the night? I took a cab to the ER with my purse clutched like a life raft. They cleaned the cut near my ear, checked for fractures. The nurse looked at me like she'd seen this scene 100 times before, and she had to. "Do you feel safe going home?" she asked. I lied. I said yes, because my kids were there. But they weren't. Not anymore. By the time I opened my front door the next morning, Alex was gone. Liam and Emily were gone. Their clothes, their backpacks, the family photos on the bookshelf gone. Even the coffee mug Liam made me in kindergarten was missing. And in their place, just that note. "The kids are with me. Don't try to find us. Don't try to find us." I don't remember walking to the phone, just that suddenly. I was on the floor, holding it like it was a weapon I didn't know how to use. I called Sarah. My hands shook so hard. I dropped the phone twice. "He took them," I whispered when she answered. "He really took them." There was silence. Then I'm on my way. That night. Sarah sat next to me on the couch, her laptop open, her face hard. "We're not waiting," she said. "We start now." "But where, how?" "He's arrogant, Rach. He thinks he's smarter than the system. But I promise you he left a trail." And she was right. She always is. But we didn't know then that the trail would lead us across state lines, to a small town where Elena lived with Alex, pretending to be mother to my children. And I didn't know yet that the law wasn't going to protect me. Not unless I made it. Sarah and I didn't sleep that night. She stayed over. Laptop on her knees, coffee untouched on the table beside her. I sat with a legal pad and pen, because somehow writing helped me feel like I still existed, that I still had control over something. My hands trembled as I wrote the names of every one of Alex's family members, coworkers, college friends, anyone he might run to. Sarah was scrolling through old Facebook posts, flipping between Google Maps and our joint online banking account like a seasoned investigator. "He's too arrogant to cover his tracks completely," she said. "There's always something." It was 3:12 a.m. when we found it. A payment from our shared account, one we never fully closed after the kids were born, to a real estate agency in Franklin, Tennessee. $2,100 labeled first month plus deposit. The timestamp was the day before the hospital. My stomach dropped. Franklin. A small, sleepy town just outside of Nashville. He had mentioned it once, said if he ever wanted to disappear, that's where he'd go. Said it was the kind of place no one asks questions. At the time, I thought it was a joke. Now, it was a warning I had ignored. I stared at the screen, a mixture of rage and dread bubbling in my chest. It didn't feel real. My children Liam, who called bugs bug buddies and refused to step on them. Emily, who still couldn't fall asleep unless she had my scarf near her pillow. They were in Tennessee.
4 hours away.
With him.
With her.
Let's go, I said. I'm not waiting. Sarah didn't even blink. Grab what you need. Overnight bag. All the paperwork you have on the kids. Birth certificates, custody records, anything. There was no official custody ruling between Alex and me. We'd never needed one. Until now. And that right there was my first legal failure. I packed like a soldier preparing for war. I shoved diapers, snacks, and a folder full of documents into a tote bag. I wore a hoodie to cover the bruise on my cheek. As we drove out of Evanston, dawn was just beginning to stretch across the horizon. The streets were still empty. It felt like the world was holding its breath. The first 2 hours were silent. My mind kept playing out all the ways this could go wrong. What if he moved again? What if he changed their names? What if they forgot me? I stared out the window as farmland blurred past, chewing the skin on my lip until it bled. Sarah finally spoke.
We're not going to barge in. We do this smart. That's how we win.
I nodded. But inside, I wasn't thinking about winning. I was thinking about Emily's voice calling me mommy for the last time, about how I didn't even get to say goodbye. When we pulled into Franklin, it was early afternoon. The town looked like something out of a Hallmark movie, tree-lined streets, a quaint bakery with rocking chairs outside, American flags on nearly every porch. It made me sick. We parked 3 houses down from the address on the bank statement. A beige one-story with a white porch and blue shutters. A small welcome y'all sign hung crookedly on the front door. I recognized the toy truck in the yard immediately, Liam's. The right wheel was missing. He refused to throw it out. Then I saw them, my babies, running barefoot in the grass, laughing. And there he was, Alex, stepping out onto the porch like this was any ordinary Sunday, holding a glass of iced tea, laughing at something Elena said. She was holding Emily, cradling her like she had the right. I couldn't breathe. I gripped the steering wheel so tight, my knuckles turned white. I'm going in, I whispered. Sarah grabbed my wrist. Not yet. She's holding my daughter. Sarah, she's holding my baby.
I know. But if you go in there right now, you could lose everything. They could paint you as unstable. You have no court order. You have a documented injury and a missing child use.
I hated that she was right. So we drove straight to the local police station. The front desk officer, middle-aged, buzz-cut, southern drawl, looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language when I explained what had happened. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "since he's the children's biological father, and there's no legal order limiting his custody, this isn't technically considered kidnapping." I felt the ground shift. "You're telling me he can just take them after hitting me, after hospitalizing me, and there's nothing I can do?" He softened slightly. "Not exactly. If there's evidence of abuse or risk to the children, we can do a welfare check, but you'll need to petition for emergency custody back in Illinois." I clenched my jaw so tight, my teeth ached. Sarah stepped forward. "What can we do now to make sure the children are safe?" He looked at the address we provided. "We'll send 2 officers over for a wellness check. If anything seems off, we'll notify Child Protective Services." It wasn't justice. It wasn't enough. But it was something. The drive back to the house felt longer, the air in the car thick with dread. When we arrived, the officers asked me to stay in the car. "I want to see them," I said. "If they're okay, We'll bring them out to speak with you, the taller one replied. But we need you to stay calm, ma'am. I watched them knock on the door. Alex answered, expression shifting from surprise to forced politeness. I knew that mask. I'd lived with it for years. He gestured casually, tried to make small talk. Then Elena appeared behind him, still holding Emily. I could barely hear her crying through the car window. That sound shattered me. The officers entered the house. The door closed behind them, left slightly ajar. Minutes passed. It felt like hours. Then one of them returned to the car. We're going to bring the children out to speak with you, but I need you to stay calm. No sudden moves. My hand flew to my mouth as the car door opened. And then I saw them. Liam, Emily, my babies, standing in the doorway, confused, holding hands. Emily's hair was messy. Liam's shirt was inside out. They looked smaller than I remembered. Emily blinked and then whispered, Mommy? I opened the door slowly. I couldn't touch them, not yet. But I knelt to their eye level. I missed you, I said, voice breaking. I missed you so much. And just as Emily stepped forward, reaching for me, Elena's voice cut through the air like a knife. She doesn't have custody. This is harassment. One of the officers turned. Ma'am, we'll need you to step back inside. Alex's voice followed. This is exactly the kind of instability I told you about. I turned to the officer. I want a full report on file. I want Child Protective Services involved. And I want this documented, all of it. His eyes flicked between us. Then he nodded. We'll file the paperwork. I stood there as my children were led back inside. And that was the moment I knew. This wasn't just a custody fight anymore. This was war. Back at the motel, I sat on the edge of the bed. Hands clenched so tightly in my lap, I could feel my nails pressing into skin. My kids had been right there. I'd looked into their eyes, heard their voices, and then just like that, they were taken away again. It wasn't legal. It wasn't right. But it was real. Sarah paced the room behind me, her footsteps soft on the faded carpet. We need a plan, a real one. She was already on her phone, searching attorneys, emergency custody laws, CPS regulations. Her voice was the only thing anchoring me. I saw her holding Emily. I murmured, like she was hers. Sarah stopped pacing. You'll hold her again, I promise. But promises couldn't erase the image burned into my brain. Elena brushing Emily's hair behind her ear. Elena, wearing my daughter's handmade beaded necklace, the one she gave me for Mother's Day last year. I had worn it to every parent-teacher conference, every birthday party. Emily picked each color herself: purple, pink, gold, a crooked little heart charm at the center. And now that woman had it around her neck. It wasn't just a necklace. It was my place, my proof, my presence. And she was wearing it like a trophy. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The ceiling fan clicked overhead in an endless rhythm, like a countdown I didn't understand. At 6:42 a.m., Sarah handed me a coffee and a name. Mary Clayton. She's a family attorney here, former CPS consultant. She doesn't advertise, but she's damn good. We were in her office by 9:30. Mary was mid-50s, no nonsense, sharp eyes behind thick glasses. Her office smelled like peppermint and printer toner. I laid everything out: photos of my injuries, the police report from Illinois, the hospital records, even the voicemail where Alex had once said, "You'll never take them from me. I don't care what I have to do." She listened without interrupting, then leaned back, hands steepled. "I believe you," she said, "but belief doesn't win custody. Proof does." "I have proof," I said quickly. "That voicemail, the bank transfer, the report from the welfare check." Mary nodded slowly. "It's a good start. And here's what we're going to do. She laid it out like a battle map. Step 1. File for emergency custody in Illinois immediately. Step 2. Initiate a formal complaint to CPS Tennessee, attaching everything we had, particularly the welfare check and photos of my injuries. Step 3. Demand a supervised home study on Alex and Elena. Step 4. Prepare for war. And one more thing, she added. Start recording everything, every interaction, every phone call. You're in a one-party consent state here. If Alex threatens you again, we catch it. That night, Sarah and I returned to our motel and started building the case like it was a puzzle. We labeled files, uploaded documents to a cloud folder, emailed everything to Mary. I started writing a timeline, not just of what happened, but how it felt. Because somewhere deep down, I needed someone to understand that this wasn't about custody. It was about erasure. Alex hadn't just taken the kids. He was trying to rewrite who I was. He'd always been good at control calm, calculated, never the angry type people feared. But he didn't need to scream to destroy. He just needed silence. When the call from CPS came 3 days later, I was eating cold cereal and watching a stain spread across the motel ceiling. The woman's voice was clinical, polite. We've received the welfare check report and supporting documentation. Based on initial review, we will be conducting a home inspection and formal interviews. I nearly dropped the phone. Will they know it's from me? We do not disclose source identity, she said. However, context may lead them to guess. I didn't care anymore. Let him guess. Let him know. 2 days later, Mary called. Emergency custody hearing is set for next week. I want you in court. No excuses. And bring the necklace. What? The one Elena wore. The one your daughter gave you. You said you have photos from when it was yours. I nodded. We'll make it clear Alex and Elena aren't just hiding the kids. They're appropriating their entire emotional world. That necklace proves intent, disregard, control. It sounded small. But small things matter. I remembered Emily's chubby fingers holding out that necklace to me. So you always remember me, Mommy. And now someone else wore it. Like I didn't exist. The day of the CPS inspection, I drove past the house and parked 2 blocks away. I watched from behind tinted windows as the social worker stepped out of a gray sedan, clipboard in hand. The front door opened. Alex stood tall, confident. But behind him, I could see Elena in the hallway, holding Emily again. That same damn necklace around her neck. My daughter's heart. I gripped the steering wheel until it groaned. Then something else happened. Emily turned. She looked past the social worker, past Alex, right into my windshield. She squinted. Then she smiled.
It was tiny.
Tentative. But it was mine. Sarah, sitting beside me, squeezed my hand. She sees you. I swallowed the sob threatening to break through. She remembers. And in that moment, I didn't feel powerless. I felt seen. Not by the law, not by Alex, but by the only people who mattered. And that was enough for now. Courtroom air always feels colder than it should. Like it's built to remind you this is no place for emotion, no place for warmth. I sat at the petitioner's table, palms damp, jaw clenched so tight I could feel the ache travel down my neck. Beside me, Mary flipped through her binder with surgical focus. Each tab, each document, each highlighted sentence, she had built this case like a fortress. Across the aisle, Alex sat with his lawyer, a tall man in a sleek gray suit, who looked like he billed by the breath. Elena wasn't present. I figured they didn't want to risk putting her on the stand. Smart, cowardly. He glanced at me once, smirked, like this was still a game to him.
But it wasn't? Not anymore?
The judge, a woman named Judge Romero, mid-60s with piercing eyes and a voice like gravel called the hearing to order. Mary stood. Your Honor, we're here today to seek emergency temporary custody of Liam and Emily Monroe on behalf of their mother, Rachel Monroe. The children were unlawfully removed from their state of residence following a documented incident of domestic violence, and are currently residing with the respondent in Tennessee without a custody order in place. The opposing counsel cut in. Objection to characterization. Your Honor, my client has joint legal rights as the children's biological father. Romero didn't even blink. Let her finish. I gripped the edge of the table as Mary began laying out the evidence. The ER report listing blunt force trauma to my left cheekbone, photos of my injuries, the police report, screenshots of Alex's threatening voicemail, bank statements showing his secret relocation payment, the welfare check results, submitted by the Franklin PD, noting potential emotional instability in the household and unexplained behavioral withdrawal from the children. But then came the moment I didn't expect. Mary pulled a small velvet pouch from her briefcase. Inside the necklace, Emily's necklace. She held it up gently, like it was made of glass. Your Honor, she said, this necklace was made by Emily for her mother last spring. It has a heart charm engraved with Mommy. Photos of the child presenting the necklace to Rachel are included in Exhibit C. We now have evidence photographic from the welfare check that the woman currently residing with the children is wearing this necklace, the child's emotional gift, appropriated by a non-parent. The judge raised an eyebrow. You're saying it's being used symbolically to replace the mother? Yes, Mary said calmly. It's part of a clear, intentional pattern to alienate the children from their mother. It's emotional displacement consistent with psychological control and parental erasure. I stared at the necklace. My throat tightened. It was just plastic beads and string. But to Emily, it was a bridge between us. And Alex had burned it. Then it was Alex's turn. His lawyer stood, confident. Your Honor, what we have here is a case of emotional exaggeration. Mr. Monroe did not abduct his children. He simply relocated with them temporarily to give the family space during a period of heightened tension. There is no court order preventing such action. Furthermore, Ms. Monroe has no income, no permanent residence, and has displayed erratic behavior consistent with instability. He looked over at me as he said it, like I was already defeated. May I respond? I asked, quietly. The judge nodded. I stood up, my knees trembling beneath my jeans. I gave up everything to raise my children, I said, voice steady despite the tremor in my hands, my career, my family, my sense of self, and I did it gladly, because they were my world. I looked over at Alex, and the man who took them from me did it with a bruise still fresh on my face. He didn't leave to protect them. He left to punish me. And he's still doing it. A pause. Then, softer, I added, but I'm not afraid anymore. Silence settled across the courtroom. Judge Romero folded her hands. I've seen many cases where families tear themselves apart and use the children as weapons. But when I see a pattern of secrecy, relocation without notice, and clear documentation of abuse, I act. She looked directly at Alex. Mr. Monroe, you may have legal rights as a father, but you don't have the right to erase a mother. And then, to me, temporary sole physical custody is granted to Rachel Monroe pending full review. Visitation for Mr. Monroe will be supervised, pending a court-ordered psychological evaluation. I didn't exhale until we were outside the courtroom. The sky looked bluer. The air felt sharper, like I'd been underwater for weeks and finally broke the surface. Sarah was waiting outside. When she saw me, she grinned so hard it hurt me. You did it. Not yet, I said, but I've got a foot in the door. That night, I was allowed my first unsupervised visit. We met at a child-friendly space at CPS, There were plastic dinosaurs, coloring books, and juice boxes, but I barely noticed, because Liam ran into my arms so hard, I almost fell. "Mommy," he sobbed, "where were you?" I buried my face in his hair. "I was looking for you, baby, every day." Emily clung to my side. Her fingers twisted the edge of my sweater like she was afraid I'd vanish again. I pulled something from my pocket. A new necklace. Same colors, same crooked charm. I knelt down and held it out. "This one's for you, Emmy. So you remember, I'll always come back." Her eyes lit up. And in that moment, we rewrote something. Stitch by stitch. Having custody of my kids again wasn't the fairy tale ending people expected it to be. It was messy. Bittersweet. They came home like little ghosts, smiling one moment, flinching the next. Liam had night terrors for the first 2 weeks. Emily would cry every time I left the room, even to shower. We'd won the court order, but the real healing had barely begun. Still, every night, I sang "You Are My Sunshine" to them, just like before. Emily curled next to me with her new necklace around her neck, this one hers, not stolen, a small pink plastic heart pressed to her chest like armor. Meanwhile, I was preparing for battle. Because Alex hadn't gone quiet. He was just regrouping. Mary warned me, men like him don't accept defeat. They shift tactics, watch the perimeter. And sure enough, it started small. Voicemails, never threats. Just enough passive aggression to skate under the radar. "You should be careful, Rachel. Raising kids without structure leads to long-term damage." Then came the surprise CPS visit. Anonymous report. Alleged neglect. The caseworker knocked on my door with a clipboard and a stiff smile. We received a call about possible emotional instability in the home. I invited her in, offered coffee, showed her the kids' drawings, their progress journals, the lunch boxes neatly packed in the fridge. She left with nothing to report. But it rattled me. It was a reminder Alex hadn't stopped fighting. He'd just changed the battlefield. And I needed to change mine too. Sarah and I set up a shared spreadsheet we called the Shield. Every drop-off and pickup, every call, every email was documented, time-stamped, and backed up in the cloud. We installed a Ring camera on the front door, got a safety plan from the domestic violence shelter nearby. But the twist? It didn't come from Alex. It came from Elena. One Tuesday morning, I got a message through an unknown email address. A anonymous address. No subject line, no greeting. Just one line. "You don't know what he's capable of. Please call me." I stared at the screen. Then the second message came. He forged my signature on the daycare withdrawal form. I only found out after. I blinked. Daycare withdrawal. Emily hadn't been in daycare while she was with them, or so I'd assumed, but the document was attached to the email. And Elena's signature looked nearly perfect. Except for one thing, her lowercase e always looped backward. This one didn't. My heart pounded. I called Mary, who cross-referenced the form with other documents Elena had signed in the custody case. "This could qualify as document falsification," she said. "And if Elena flips on him, that's leverage." But first I had to know if it was real. I texted the number included in the email. 5 minutes later, Elena called me. Her voice trembled, not like before, not confident and condescending. She sounded scared. "Rachel, I didn't know," she said. "He told me you gave up custody voluntarily, that you had a breakdown. He showed me fake paperwork. I didn't question it. I wanted to believe him." Why now, I asked. Why reach out? She hesitated, because last week, he locked Liam in his room for hours, because he talked back. And Rachel, I couldn't get the key. He took it to work with him. The air went cold. "That's abuse," I said. "That's criminal." I know, she whispered. I should have left sooner. Then help me, testify. I'm scared of him, she said. But I'll try. If it means getting those kids away from him for good, I'll do it. The next step was risky. Mary drafted a subpoena for Elena, but we couldn't serve it until the final custody hearing was scheduled. Alex had no idea Elena had flipped, and that gave us a rare window to strike. But just when I thought things were finally moving our way, he struck back. Hard. One Thursday afternoon, Sarah was driving the kids home from school while I met with Mary to prepare our witness list. She called me from the car. Her voice was shaky. Rachel, he followed us. What? I saw him in the rear view. At pickup, he didn't do anything. Just circled the block twice and parked down the street. When I turned onto our road, he vanished. We checked the ring cam. Nothing. But the footage from the school parking lot that showed his car. Parked, engine running. Watching. I filed a police report. Mary filed for a no-contact modification to the custody order. But something in me snapped that day. It wasn't enough to play defense anymore. It was time to finish this. I knew what I had to do. I called Elena again. I'm ready, she said before I even spoke. I'll give you everything. The plan was simple. She'd record a conversation with Alex, one where he admitted to locking Liam up, where he mocked the court, where he made it clear this was never about the kids. It was about punishing me. Elena met him at a diner 2 blocks from his new job. She wore a wire, Sarah's idea, borrowed from a journalist friend, legal in our state, admissible if recorded properly. The transcript still haunts me. Alex, you think a judge is going to hand 2 kids to a woman who ran to the cops over a slap? Elena, you falsified my signature. Alex laughs, because you would have chickened out. You always do. Elena, what about locking Liam in? Alex, he cried for 10 minutes and learned a lesson. What? You want to give Rachel more ammo? You better stay quiet. We didn't wait. The next morning, Mary filed the audio with the court as emergency evidence. And just like that, the final hearing was moved up. Alex didn't know it yet, but his house of cards was about to collapse. The courthouse felt different this time. It wasn't just the stakes, though, they were sky high. It was me? I walked in with my shoulders back, my steps steady. Not because I wasn't afraid, but because I wasn't alone. My truth had weight now. Evidence, witnesses, a paper trail, and a recording that could punch a hole through the persona Alex had so carefully built. And sitting next to me was the last person I ever thought I'd count on, Elena. She looked pale, tired, but resolved. When she saw me, she gave a small nod, not apology, not friendship, something else, solidarity. The courtroom filled slowly. CPS representatives, court-appointed therapists, a few child advocates. Alex arrived last. He walked in alone. No smirk this time. His lawyer looked tense. I guess they'd heard about the recording. Judge Romero took the bench. She glanced at the stack of files in front of her like she already knew the ending just needed to let the actors perform. We started with the basics timeline. Welfare concerns. Behavioral changes in the kids since returning home. Then came the moment. Mary stood. Your Honor, with the court's permission, we'd like to play a recording. It's a legally obtained conversation between Mr. Monroe and Ms. Elena Carter, captured in a one-party consent jurisdiction. The judge raised an eyebrow. Is this the falsification evidence? Yes, and more. The courtroom fell quiet as the clip played. Alex's voice confident, cold, callous. You think a judge is going to hand 2 kids to a woman who ran to the cops over a slap? Because you would have chickened out. You always do. He cried for 10 minutes and learned a lesson. The final line hit like a hammer. Even the court reporter stopped typing for a second. Judge Romero looked over the rim of her glasses, directly at Alex. "Mr. Monroe, would you like to respond to this recording?" His lawyer leaned in fast, whispering something sharp. Alex's face turned a shade paler. He cleared his throat. It was taken out of context. "I was venting. I didn't mean—" "Let me be clear," the judge interrupted, voice steady. "You admitted to false documentation, to using discipline bordering on abuse, and to weaponizing the custody process. This is not about context. This is about character." The silence that followed was suffocating. Mary moved swiftly to submit the signed daycare form with mismatched handwriting, testimony from the CPS investigator, and screenshots of Alex's message to me where he said I should be grateful I wasn't replaced sooner. Then Elena testified. She sat down, hands folded, and said clearly, "I enabled him. I was complicit. But once I realized what he was doing, how far it went, I couldn't unsee it." Her voice cracked once. "When I found Liam crying through a locked door, and I couldn't get him out, I knew I'd become the kind of woman I swore I'd never be." I watched Alex while she spoke. His jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. He couldn't. He was losing, and for the first time, he knew it. Finally, I took the stand. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I told the truth. About the pain, the fear, the endless gaslighting, how he erased me from my kids' lives, not because I was unfit, but because it made him feel powerful. And then I held up the necklace. The first one, the one Elena wore in the photo during the welfare check. "This was mine," I said, voice trembling just once. "My daughter made it for me. And when I saw someone else wearing it, I realized this wasn't just about custody. It was about erasing who I was to my children, replacing their memories, their attachments, their truth." That was the moment I saw something shift in Judge Romero's expression. She'd heard enough. Her ruling came swift and sharp. Permanent sole legal and physical custody awarded to Ms. Rachel Monroe. Supervised visitation for Mr. Monroe will be at the discretion of the assigned social worker. Pending psychological review. No overnight visits for the foreseeable future. Alex's mouth opened slightly like he might protest. But he didn't. He just stared ahead, blinking. The bailiff nodded at me to step down. I felt my knees buckle slightly as I walked back to my seat. Sarah grabbed my hand, hard, and whispered, "You did it. It's over." But I didn't answer. Because deep down, I knew it wasn't. Not yet. Not when someone like Alex had lost control, publicly, legally, emotionally. And especially not when. 2 hours later, I received an alert from my Ring app. Motion detected at front door. It was 9:47 p.m. When I opened the video clip, my stomach dropped. It was Alex, standing in the dark, hands in his pockets, just staring at the door. No knocking, no movement, just watching. And then he smiled. The image of Alex standing at my door haunted me for days. He never knocked, never said a word, just stood there in the dark, smiling into the Ring camera like it was all a joke. But it wasn't a joke. It was a warning. I forwarded the footage to Mary and the police, filed for a restraining order the next morning. CPS backed it. The judge signed it in under an hour. And yet I still slept with a chair jammed under my doorknob. Because legal orders don't stop a man who doesn't care about laws, Alex didn't care about consequences. He cared about control. And now that he'd lost it, he was unpredictable. I changed our routines. Picked up the kids from the side entrance of school, moved in with Sarah temporarily. Somewhere no one could find us. Kept my phone charged, keys in hand, eyes scanning parking lots. But more than anything, I watched my children. Because their healing wasn't linear. Emily had started biting her nails again. Liam barely spoke at dinner, one afternoon. I found them huddled in the laundry room with the lights off, whispering like they were afraid someone might hear. "We were hiding," Emily said, "in case Daddy came." My heart cracked open. That night, I sat them down on the couch and told them the truth in the simplest words I could find. Daddy can't hurt you anymore, and if he tries, we're not alone. There are people who will protect us. They nodded, not fully believing me, but needing to. Then I pulled out the box. Inside were 2 necklaces. Emily's had her original design pink, purple, gold beads, and the crooked little heart. Liam's was blue and green, with a superhero charm. "I made these for you," I said, "so you'll always know who you are and where you belong." It wasn't just jewelry. It was armor. A few weeks later, I got a call from the DA's office. Elena had submitted an affidavit. She'd gone further than expected, reporting additional falsified documents, details of financial manipulation, and a prior incident where Alex had tried to bribe a daycare worker to lie during a custody evaluation. They were opening a criminal investigation. Fraud, coercion, potential endangerment of minors. When I hung up, I didn't cheer. I exhaled. Not because it was over, but because justice finally felt like it had a pulse. The day of Alex's arrest. I was walking Emily to her art class when my phone buzzed. I opened the link Sarah sent me, a news article. Local man charged in custody fraud scheme. Emotional abuse. Allegations surface. His mugshot looked hollow. Not the smug man I remembered. Just small. When Emily asked what I was smiling about, I just kissed her forehead and said, "Nothing, sweetheart, just a little good news." But inside, something heavy finally shifted. That night, I sat at the dining table after the kids were asleep. The house was quiet, safe, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself breathe. I looked at the new necklaces, 3 of them now. Emily's, Liam's, and mine restored, restrung, with a new charm at the center, a small silver phoenix. Because this wasn't about destruction anymore. It was about rebuilding, piece by piece, not just as a mother, but as a woman who refused to disappear. The next morning, I mailed something to Judge Romero, a thank you card. Inside, I placed a photo of me and the kids on our front porch smiling, arms around each other, wearing our necklaces. On the back, I'd written one sentence. "Thank you for seeing what he tried to erase." Because that's what this entire journey had been about. Not just custody, but visibility. I had been bruised, gaslit, erased, but not broken. And if you're listening now, maybe you're somewhere in the middle of your own storm. I want you to hear this. You are not crazy. You are not alone. And you are not powerless. Keep the receipts. Document everything. Tell the truth until someone listens. Because one day, the world will hear you. And when it does, you won't need revenge. You'll have freedom. And that's the real win.